Hi friends, welcome back to the series of UML diagrams. Now it is time to see what the component diagram is all about. A component diagram shows a high level structure of a system by depicting the software components and their interfaces and their dependencies. It is often used in system design and implementation phase to show how different modules or subsystems interact. So this is usually done at the system design level and the implementation level. The component diagram shows the physical and modular structure of a system, what parts or the components of the system is made of and how they are connected. Think of it as answering what are the software building blocks and how they interact with each other. So the key elements in the component diagram are the components, that is represent the modular part of the system, shown as a rectangles with the two smaller rectangles on the side. So here the component can be a fraud detection engine, database, reporting module, and so on. Then there are interfaces, that's points where components interact. So a small circle for the provided interface and the half circle for the required interface. So some components will provide the service, so they are called the provider, and some components require services, so they are represented as a required side. Then there are some who are providing the services, the provide interface, and other one is a required interface. So between two components, one is providing some service, other is receiving some service or which requires services. So the required services is represented with a half circle, and the providing interface is represented with a full circle, and dependencies are shown with a dotted arrow showing one component depends on the other one. So these are the various symbols used in the component diagram. So we have a component where we draw one rectangle for each component, each module, and name of that, and then inside we have this symbol saying that this is a component. Then the components having a common features can be put under one package. So this will combine multiple elements in a system like classes, components, interfaces into a group, so that we can talk with a higher abstraction. Then we have artifact. These are the physical units of information, that's a source code, exe files, scripts, documents that are created or required during a system's development process, whereas this symbol is for modules in a system, that is the interaction and communication across via interfaces. So this is talking about the provided interface, and this is the required interface. So this symbol is one or more clearly defined interfaces provided the data outside. So that's a socket which wants the data or the information. So the rectangle, a square is shown for the port and indicates separate point of interaction between the component and its environment, outside world. Relationship is shown with a solid line and dependency shown with a dotted arrow. So taking as an example a fraud detection machine learning system, the components we have user interface for the bank employees and list and so on. Then we have a fraud detection engine that detects fraudulent transactions, and we have a component called the ML model trainer that trains and updates the machine learning model. We have a component called database that stores the transactions and the fraud history. Then we have a model or the component called a reporting system that generates fraud reports and so on. And looking at the relations between these components, then we have a UI connects to fraud detection engine and the reporting system. So from the user interface we have connection to the fraud detection engine and the reporting service. The fraud detection engine depends on the database and the machine learning model there. So unless until you have data, our fraud detection engine cannot work unless until the machine learning model is available, trained model is available, this cannot proceed further. So that depends on these two. Then the reporting service depends on the database. So now the question is how to create this. Yes, of course we have to use the use case diagram for creating that. So pick up one use case and say from the fraud detection machine learning system use case, we have a use case like train model, detect fraud, generate reports. So identify the system components that implement these use cases. So ML model trainer is one component that implements the train model. The fraud detection engine is a component that implements detect fraud. Reporting service is one component that implements generate reports. Database is one component that supports all, that is storing the transaction fraud data reports and all that. And then user interface is another component that provides access for the customer, bank employee, fraud analyst to our system. Then step 3 is to map the actors to the interfaces. Customer interacts with the user interface for the transactions. The bank employee interacts with the UI. So for report requests or monitoring, the fraud analyst interacts with the UI for fraud case reviews. Step 4, define the dependencies. UI depends on the fraud detection engine as well as the reporting service. The fraud detection engine depends on the database and the machine learning model trainer. The reporting service depends on the database and so on. And the next step is to add the interfaces. The lollipop is used for representing the provided interface, whereas the socket semicircle is used for the required interface. For example, order service requires process payment from the gateway. So order service is one component, payment gateway is another component, and process payment requires the service of the orders. So the from the order service we have a lollipop, so that it provides the service, and the gateway is receiving the service. So we have a semicircle at the gateway side. So the next step is draw the diagram. So nodes components like the order service, payment gateway and all that, then provided requires interfaces, then draw the dependencies, draw that is the dashed arrows, and optionally include the UI as a client component. So these are the symbols used. So boxes with two tabs is a component or a self-contained module. A lollipop is a provided interface. The services the component offers. Socket is a half circle that requires the interface, that is the service the component depends on. Arrow shows the dependency, and the package, the group of components can be put under one package. So as an example, we talk about ATM transactions. So we have one component bank account, one component debit card, one component credit card, and there is a external connection to the ATM. There is an external connection to the purchase. So a bank account. So bank account requires the information from the debit card. Debit card provides the information about the card, and debit card. So here we can see that when we have a lollipop here, so here the lollipop says that the debit card provides the information to the bank account, and the bank account is receiving the information from the debit card. So whenever a transaction on the ATM is happening, then it works with the debit card. So the ATM transaction depends on the debit card. So we have this arrow, and then there is a payment direct connection we have for the credit card. So we don't just the credit card is used for the purchases and all that. So that is one way of representing. So the next issue is when to use the component diagrams. This is when explaining how large systems are structured to show microservices architecture for the code based level understanding. So when you're digging down deep into the code level working, then these component diagrams will be handy tool. So to map the components to the deployment node, so when it comes to finally deploying, then we have a component diagram, then that directly maps to the deployment nodes. So another example of a restaurant management system, we have a restaurant management system here. The various components are system database, the delivery options, contact information, online ordering, food details, payment methods, and so on. The external environment, we have user device, which is having a system access and payment account. So what we are looking here is the user device will first have an access with the system, and then will provide the details of the user device. So this lollipop says it is providing the details. So here the payment it provides the details, the payment options, receives the details for the payment, and once the ordering is done, then the food details are received from the system database, what the foods are available and all that, and the delivery options are received, are provided by the delivery option to the database. So the delivery options are stored onto the system database. The contact information are provided by this module, this component, and that gets into the system database. The system database gives the information to these three modules and so on, and the payment details are provided by this payment component, and that is received by. So the payment options are required, the payment options require the information, so it is this semicircle payment account here is providing the details, so a lollipop here, a full circle. So another example, it's about the ATM transaction. So we have an ATM transaction done from outside world, so ATM machine is providing the details. So we have a customer console, so here the customer gets in, then we have a card reader, so whenever customer puts a card, then card reader gets activated, and then it goes to the bank database, and the bank database is providing the information about the account, and then we have a web page for online transactions, then we have web merchant transactions through the card, and there is employee console, there's a client desktop. So the client desktop transactions are shown here. So that's what we are talking here is these are the providers of information. So the ATM machine provides the ATM transaction information, the bank database provides the account information, the client desktop provides the client desktop transaction information, web page provides the online transaction information, card reader provides web merchant transaction information, and so on. So that way that we can just understand what all the software components are involved in this, and how they are interacting with each other. So that's about the component diagram. Thank you.